I think we're ready to move on to our next speakers. John Reed and Chris Vaughan will talk to us about their new book, Introducing 110 Things.
Okay, let me try this.
So go ahead, guys.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself. I am John Reed. I'm going to pull these headphones off because I can't hear myself through the echo there. Um, yeah, so I am the author, along with Chris, of 110 Things to See with a Telescope. I'm based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia here, and we're just between two snowstorms here, so good time to be in Halifax. Yeah, so I basically am an author and YouTuber of all things astronomy right now, and to give you some background, I've been observing for about 10 years and doing outreach at the same time. And so I started actually when I was an accountant in corporate finance in San Francisco, and I started volunteering with the Mount Diablo Astronomical Society there, and we had almost no clouds, and which was fantastic. So like 4 nights a week, no clouds, and I found that there was a problem people having. They had telescopes and didn't know where to point them. And so I put all my thoughts down in a book called 50 Things to See with a Small Telescope. And that book was an unintentional success. And basically, I had so much fun with that book and so much fun working with the folks in the astronomy club there that I quit my job, moved to Canada, got an astrophysics degree, and now I get to do this full time. And yeah, so the reason we're here, our latest book is 110 Things to See with a Telescope with Chris Vaughan here. Yeah, Chris, how did you get involved with this project?
Well, John called me up one day, or actually sent me an email. I think you'd seen me running one of my Insider's Guide to the Galaxy broadcasts for Rask National. And we may have done Spring Galaxies, I think. It was Messier season. And you had this book just hitting for quite a while, and I guess you'd hit, a challenging spot and set it on the shelf until you were able to tackle it again, and you thought, well, maybe Chris could get me over the hill. And so I came on board to give you a hand. I think that's about how it went, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I started this book actually in 2017 or 2018. And between when I started this book and when this book got published, I actually published 5 books in between. So that's like procrastination in the extreme there. Um, so yeah, so I did a whole bunch of books for Formac, including like the book about the space station, space missions that changed the world. We did 50 animals that have been to space and 50 things to see on the moon, which is a great one. But yeah, so at the end of all those, I was finally motivated. I finally figured I had enough chops to tackle the big project that I've been dreaming of doing for like quite some time, and that was to do the Messier list better than it had ever been done before. So, and I
Yeah,
think we
and the
pulled it
idea
off.
was, yeah, you wanted to do something that was not just for beginners. So a book that beginners could easily use, but as well as advanced people could incorporate into their observing programs and even earn their observing certificate.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, my goal with all things is to take something that was previously a little complicated and simplify it enough to bring it sort of down to what the beginner can handle. And so, my 3 goals in this book were make the best book that I could on the Messier objects, hopefully better than anything that had ever been done. I wanted it to be able to accomplish if someone who buys the book should be able to very easily and understandably tackle the Messier certificate with the RASC and if they're in the States, the Messier program for the Astronomical League. And then number 3, just to have fun. So you should be able to open this book to any page, assuming you're in the correct season or the correct time of night, and see the object without much difficulty and record your observation, all without having to turn the page.
Yeah.
So Yeah, and
And
with
and
Chris's
make it
help,
affordable too, right? You wanted to make it an affordable book that, parents or grandparents that might have somebody in the family with a telescope that's finished with the planets, finished with the moon, ready to tackle the the mysteries of the universe and the other things you can see. The Messiers are ideal for that, but you need a guide to lead you by the hand and show you where they are, and this is the approach.
yeah, exactly. So should we show people a couple pages?
Absolutely. So
All right.
originally, when you reached out, I think your original plan for the book was more of a Messier marathon. Speaking of Dennis's talk a little bit ago, a guide to running a Messier marathon, and so you'd ordered things in sort of that logical fashion.
Yeah,
But
exactly. So the idea was dual purpose so that you could run it as a marathon. So starting with the autumn targets and then ending with the autumn targets on the other side, the sort of the dawn autumn targets. But it turns out that the optimal order, if it's in the beginning of autumn or doing the autumn targets, is different than if you're in March doing the autumn targets. And so Chris was really helpful in sort of rethinking the book entirely in terms of the order, um, and doing it so that it was ordered optimally for each season, as if you're in the season. And then we put notes as you go. So if you're doing a marathon, well, here's the order that you would do if you're doing the marathon.
right.
Um, so yeah,
Or if you have a clear evening and you've got a really good long observing window, something like winter, you could knock the Messier objects off on a good winter evening and just follow the order we've given you so that you catch the ones that set in the west first and then work your way across the sky to the later evening targets.
absolutely. And you can see the I think the latest video I posted on my YouTube channel, Learn to Stargaze, is a video of me going through all of the winter targets. And I always try to maximize the fun I have using the books and stargazing. And so I brought Tiffany Fields, who's an astrophysicist at St. Mary's, and we had a race. So I had to sketch all the winter targets in the same amount of time that she photographed all the winter targets. And so she had an astrophotography rig, and she was taking 1 minute exposures, and slewing and doing meridian flips and the whole thing, and I was sketching them. And so it was what was really neat about it. You'll have to see who wins because it's kind of a trick win. But I don't know, it was just so much fun, and you'll have fun watching it. We edited it down to only 8 minutes, and you can see us go through all of winter and have a great time doing it.
Yeah, so we open the book up with general information about Charles Messier and the origins of the list, and a bit about the telescopes that he used and the type of objects in the list. And then we go on and give you observing tips, planning, how to see dim objects, how to judge the seeing transparency, all the things that a beginner needs to bear in mind when you're tackling a big project like this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is sort of a hurdle, at least for me, in approaching or applying for those certificates, is just knowing those fine details. Like when you record your observation, both RASC and the Astronomical League, they do request seeing and transparency. So just knowing how to record those, sort of from 1 to 5, that's detailed in the front of the book, and it's important to know that you need to record those because, like, hypothetically, you review, you could view all the Messier objects and forget to note that, and then technically you wouldn't be eligible for your certificate. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's why you have the slots on the page to remind everybody what to look out for.
exactly.
So
And we even,
we've given folks tips for how to locate the objects. Generally, you'll see that each individual object has a Telrad ring on it, and we've
yep.
made special effort to make sure that the Telrad placements are
Oop.
all very accurate, the bullseyes. So you should be able to use those, or just point your finder in the middle of where the dot would be. But John went. We prepared basic general information about the fun aspects of the object, tips on where how to star hop to it in many cases, and then John, talk about your photographs.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really wanted to do as a goal was to photograph all of the Messier objects consistently. And that was a bigger challenge than I thought it would be, because I was using the university's telescope, the Burke-Gaffney Observatory, but it can only go so low. And then so I had to open an account with I think it was called Sierra Skies at the time, and it's no longer operational, but it was a remote observatory in Arizona, and so I was taking the rest of the images there. But we ended up, by the end of it, getting them all except for some of the really, really wide field ones, and then we ended up using digital sky survey. If you can see the screen here, to sort of get these really wide fields. But yeah, so at least 108 of the targets were all photographed consistently with these robotic telescopes, or some of the ones that are more wide field, like M8, for example. I used the Sharp Star telescope, which has a really wide field, and so it was neat to sort of go through the process of photographing them all as well for the book.
Now,
Yeah.
one of your challenges, I think, when we first started talking was how to convey and tackle the Virgo cluster, which is Dennis touched on earlier. And so that was
Yes.
really fun to work out a way to convey that in a reasonable, logical way. I
This
think
was
we, yeah,
definitely
go
one of
ahead.
our biggest challenges, and you taught me something here that I never really had been able to articulate before, and that's the concept of galaxy hopping. And so you basically find, and I think you said you used M87, sort of like your brightest one, or you can use Macarian's chain,
Yeah.
and sort of use that as your base of operations, and then hop down to the objects, and then go back, and then hop over, and then hop back. And then you also have to pay attention to what type of telescope you're using, right? So if you're using a Newtonian telescope, you have one view, but if your telescope is a refractor with a 90-degree diagonal, you're mirror reversed. So you're going to have to use another map, in which case we provided both. And so you use the one that's appropriate for your telescope.
Very good. So why don't you talk a little bit about Tim Russ?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So Tim did a talk with this center, I believe.
Yep.
And you had told me about this, and then I went and rewatched it, and I think you had proposed, because we were brainstorming people to use for the forward, and so Tim rose to the top of our list, and so I found his email on the internet, sent him a note, and he was so excited about the project and the book. He is an avid amateur astronomer. He volunteers at the Griffith Observatory. You can see him volunteering in some videos with Robert Picardi, I believe his name is. He played the Doctor in Voyager, the holographic Doctor, and so they have some comedic pieces there as they do STEM outreach with amateur astronomy. And so it was just neat, and so we exchanged a lot of emails back and forth to sort of get the forward just right. And it was a really cool experience, just because he was I'm a big Star Trek fan, so it was neat working with him on that. And then later on, I was working with Cyan Proctor on her book. So here's Cyan. So if you remember her from the Inspiration 4 mission, she was talking about how she wanted to get back into astronomy, but she wanted to do sort of the COVID protocol too, where you do astronomy, but project the image on an iPhone so people aren't all up at the eyepiece. And so Tim has one of these in telescopes, and that's how he does his astrophotography, because he's mostly a visual guy. And so I told Cyan to go reach out to Tim, and it was really neat because Tim was a huge fan of Cyan from both the Inspirational 4 mission and some other space documentaries that Cyan was in, before she became an Inspiration 4 astronaut. And so it was really neat to see them get together on that project as well, on being ambassadors for Intelescope.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so for anyone that doesn't know, so Cyan is an artist too, and this is the book that we put together the last couple months for her. And so this is all the art she did leading up to her space mission, and then you can see some of the art pieces that she did well on board the spacecraft. So this one here, and then this one here. And then I think they actually based the dragon wings off a drawing of hers as well, which that you get when you fly the Dragon spacecraft. So
Very cool. Very cool.
Really cool
So
connection.
where can people get the book?
Yeah, so people can get the book primarily on Amazon. The Amazon.com actually has a hardcover for $20.95. They're marking that down 40%, which is awesome. Get it in as many hands as possible. But you can also order it from the bookstores. I don't think they're stocking it except for Con Telescopes. Con Telescopes is stocking it.
Yeah.
You can go into Chapters and order it if you want to go in store. But Amazon is probably the easiest. You'll get it the fastest that way.
And for local Rascals, Toronto Centre members, I've got a number of the books as well at home here at home. So if anybody wants one, they can get one from me directly as well. So that's fine. Very good. And so it's really exciting. So I'm really proud of it. I think we did a great job. We tried to make it scientifically rigorous, but also easy to use. And we're looking for people to give it a try and put some reviews on Amazon, which would be great too. So
absolutely, authors really rely on those reviews because that pushes the book up in the algorithm, and so that more people are able to see it. So yeah, I mean, and Chris, this book wouldn't have been what it is if it wasn't for you. I mean, Chris went and took all my paragraphs, basically rewrote most of them, and just basically made it awesome. And so just an amazing person to work with. He definitely
my pleasure. It was fun, and you had a great design, and it really turned out really well. Let's see if there are any questions.
All right, thanks, guys. That's fantastic. Emma, do we have any questions?
We sure do. We actually got a couple of comments as well. So first one is a comment from Alex, and he says, John, I'm a novice, got my first scope about 2 weeks ago, and I happen to have just picked up this book. Made my first entry in the book for M36 on Saturday.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Second comment comes in from Mark Whitesell. Got 110 things booked the other week, very well organized, and the simulated eyepiece views are great for amateurs unfamiliar with the object. Looking forward to using this book with my young daughters.
Great.
Okay, first question. What age do you need to be in order to be eligible for an observing certificate?
Oh, there are no age limits.
No.
Yeah, if you can accomplish it, they'll give you a certificate. Yeah.
The only thing you have to watch out for is it is an individual project. So, if you've got kids that want to do the program, they each have to have their own log. They each have to make their own observations and submit separately.
Yeah, and if you do have kids, if you want to share my screen again, I've got a book that I'm trying to get out in the next few months here. This is Learn to Stargaze Kids, and the neat thing about this one is that as you observe, you check the boxes at the bottom for each item, and hypothetically, you should be able to meet all the requirements for Explore the Universe. So that's RASC's very first observing program that they recommend you do first if you're just getting started.
Nice.
And so this is so look out for this project. It's been a lot of fun to work with the artist and get this suitable for kids and get them earning certificates too.
Fantastic.
Great. Next question. How do you know the seeing conditions? Using Stellarium or some other app?
Yeah, so we had a little diagram here that can help out. I usually, for seeing, you rate them from 1 to 5. And if you can see the little chart here, so 1 is the best, and that's where stars are pinpointy, and 5 is the worst, and that's where they're really, really twinkly. And transparency, the way that you can estimate that is the magnitude of the dimmest star you can see with your eye. So you would look up, see the dimmest star you can see, and then if you look at a star chart or something and see that, that's a magnitude 4 star, then your transparency would be 4. Or you can pull it right off an app like Astrospheric. It'll say what it is.
And bear in mind that the observing program reviewers aren't expecting you to have, scientifically accurate seeing. Some of it's subjective.
It's very subjective.
Was the object sharp as a tack? Was it swimming? Or were the stars twinkling, or were they steady? Just give a general sense of it, whether it's poor or good. And it also helps you because if you observed an object when the sky was really poor, you may be inclined to go back and check it on a night where the sky is really good and see more that you missed the first time.
But after you do a couple of numbers, it gets pretty quick. So like if it's perfect, 1.5, and you're, that's good enough.
Yeah.
At least I think that's good.
Great. So someone else is asking if you can provide the link to the YouTube competition where you sketched and your friend was taking photos.
Oh yeah, so the YouTube channel is just Learn to Stargaze with 2 spelled T-O, not with the number, and it should be the most recent video. But yeah, we can find a link for that.
Great.
Yeah, one of us will put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Perfect. If you take a wide field image of the Markarian chain and capture multiple targets in one image, do they all count, or would you have to center each one for them to count?
Well, so you need to. It's a visual certificate. So ideally, what you would do is look at them one at a time and sketch them. So you can't use a camera and count them that way. Yeah, it's got to be visual.
And you can use for Rask for the Rask programs, you can do it with or without a go-to telescope. You need to specify, and you can't mix and match. So it's either all go-to or either if you used go-to for any of it, then you get the go-to certificate. If you use the go-to for none of it, then you earn that sort of more difficult achievement. And yeah, you do need to. You don't have to sketch, but you should make remarks about what you noticed about each of the objects, because they're different. They're different shapes, different characteristics. So note those down.
Yeah, and to clarify, in the video I use star sense, which is I'm pushing the telescope manually, but it counts as go-to because the phone is electronically showing me where to push it. And so that doesn't count as the visual certificate. That would be the go-to certificate if you're using star sense or similar technology.
Great. Thank you. Next question comes in from Gary. What is the minimum size reflector or refractor to get most use out of this book?
So we recommend 4 inches as the minimum, and mainly that's so you can see the dimmest globular clusters, which are some of the most challenging. And so I brought this telescope up as an example. I know this one has been in stock at Costco. I don't think they make it anymore, but for some reason they had a ton of inventory. This is a Celestron Omni 102 AZ, and it has slow motion controls. It's got your 4 inches of aperture. It's easy to point. It comes with a red dot finder. And so this would sort of be your basic telescope for doing the Messiers. You might want to upgrade to a Plössl eyepiece just to get a better view. Plössl they have a lot of glass in them, provide a lot of very, very easy on the eyes versus the little ones that come with the telescope.
But Messier saw these objects in a smaller telescope. He just had really good sky conditions. So if you live in a rural site with lots of dark sky, then you don't need a larger telescope.
Yeah. So the ideal scope would be a Dobsonian, like an 8-inch Dobsonian. You could really fly through them and see them really clear, assuming dark skies.
Yeah.
But the question for sort of the minimum, I would say something like this.
That's great. This next one's a comment. Afrofuturism. Great to see it being discussed. It's so cool to see art made from space.
Yeah, Cyan is a wonderful person. You should all follow her on Instagram. She goes daily and talks to sort of her fans on Instagram, and it's really neat. And you could do her Patreon too, and she'll send you a postcard every month of her latest astrofuturism drawing.
Wow, that's really cool. The next question comes in from John. As a content creator, did Learn to Stargaze immediate?
Find its audience, or did it take a while?
Yeah.
It's still finding its audience. So it's a lot of work to run a YouTube channel. So right now I'm just coming up on 7,000 subscribers, but if you look at sort of similar channels, they're in the hundreds of thousands. So so I've had a full-time videographer for the past 4 months, and so it's been really fun to sort of build it as sort of a brand and raise the quality as we go.
Yeah, sorry, I misread that the first time. Just for anyone who didn't catch what the question was, it was, as a content creator, did Learn to Stargaze immediately find its fitting astronomer audience, or did it take a while? Thank you for your answer, though.
Yeah, work in progress.
Next up, we have a question from Paul Markov. Are you already thinking about your next book? If so, what's the subject?
Yeah, so the next one has been this the kids one that's no telescope required. That enables you to earn that Explore the Universe certificate with the RAS. Now, some of the targets require binoculars, and there's quite an intensive double star requirement for Explore the Universe. But I think with the help of a parent, at least showing them where to point the binoculars, the child would still need to make the observation. But I think we can get a lot more young people doing the Messier program, and that with that book as a guide, I think it'll help. And so that's my next project right there.
That's great. Warren wants to know, how do you sketch many objects in the dark?
Yeah, so I wear a red flashlight on my head, and I find that when I look in the eyepiece, it sort of shines over the scope, and it doesn't. I thought I had it here on my desk. Anyway, yeah, that works for me. And then as soon as I look down at the book, it's got just enough light that I could sketch it. The funny thing is, though, sometimes I think I'm doing such a good job at night, and then if I look at the sketches during the day, they're not as good as I thought I did. So that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah. I have a red LED light with a gooseneck with a USB, and I can plug it into one of the the little battery packs and just gooseneck it over my logbook, and then I have red light shining on my logbook.
Mm.
Great. That seems to be it for the questions. We have a couple of comments left. Westlake says, looks like a terrific book. Congratulations. Harold says that he really enjoyed the presentation. And we got a comment from Paul who says, during a Messier marathon, I was able to see 60 Messier objects with an 8x50 finder.
And that's a good point. So you can see the objects, about half of them, with binoculars. Some people claim to see a lot more than half. But the advantage of having the 50 millimeter finder is that you can see the objects in the finder before you go to the eyepiece. And so sometimes, on my Dobsonian, I have the 50 millimeter finder and the Telrad side by side. So you can sort of do both.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's it for the questions and comments for tonight.
Fantastic.
Thanks again, John and Chris. Sounds like a lot of fun. Well done, guys.